Sometimes there are these massive, untapped economic connections just hiding in plain sight. Well, today we're going to pull the curtain back on one of them, a potential trade gold mine between Brazil and Bangladesh that's worth hundreds of billions of dollars. So, to really get a handle on this opportunity, you first have to understand the sheer scale of Brazil. We're talking about the largest economy in all of Latin America. For 2024, its GDP is projected to be a staggering 2.19 times trillion US dollars. Just let that number sink in. And what does an economy that big do? It buys things. A lot of things. Brazil imports nearly $344 billion worth of goods and services every single year. That number right there, that's the prize. It represents this huge active market that's constantly looking for suppliers from all over the world. Okay, so how are we going to unpack all this incredible potential? Here's our game plan for this explainer. We'll start by looking at this untapped gold mine. Then we'll dig into the scale and, importantly, the complexity of the market. After that, we'll talk about building the bridge to cross that gap, walk through a practical 10-step playbook for getting in, and finally, look at what it really takes to go from just being interested to being truly successful. All right, let's dive right into our first section. An untapped gold mine. The whole story here is about the enormous difference between where things are right now and where they could be. And while this slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? On the left, you've got what Bangladesh currently exports to Brazil, about $187 million, which is, not nothing. But then you look to the right at Brazil's total imports from the whole world. That isn't just a little room for expansion, that's a wide open superhighway of opportunity. Which, of course, brings us to the big question in Section 2, scale and complexity. I mean, if the potential is so ridiculously obvious, why isn't this trade relationship already 10 or 20 times bigger? Exactly. This is the question we really need to answer. With such a massive market just sitting there, what are the real-world barriers that are keeping more businesses from jumping in and succeeding in Brazil? Well, the reality is Brazil is a pretty demanding market. You can't just show up and expect to win. You've got to navigate a whole unique set of challenges. For starters, there are communication hurdles. The business language is Portuguese, not English or Spanish. And your product, your branding, it often needs to be localized to connect with people. Then you've got the logistical headaches. Super complex distribution networks, really high import costs and taxes, and very specific regulations for different sectors. And on top of all that, the business culture itself can be different. Negotiations can take a long time. It's a high wall to climb. So how in the world do you get over that wall? Well, that leads us right to Section 3, building the bridge. This is where we stop talking about the problems and start outlining a clear solution. And it's all about having a structured, intelligent approach to entering the market. Let's be super clear about what market entry support actually is. It's not just a bit of friendly advice. It's an organized system of assistance. It's specifically designed to help a company get into a foreign market more effectively, much more safely, and with a way, way higher chance of actually succeeding. And here is the absolute key. This kind of support takes market expansion and transforms it from a risky, expensive gamble into a clear, manageable process. You're essentially replacing, "I hope this works," with, "Here's our strategy." So who actually provides this kind of support? Well, organizations like the Brazil-Bangladesh Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or the BBCCI. I mean, their own mission statement says it all. They exist to facilitate trade by creating a platform for networking and sharing knowledge. They are, quite literally, the architects building this bridge. All right, let's get to the really actionable part of this whole thing. Section 4, a 10-step entry playbook. This is the practical, step-by-step guide for how an exporter can strategically and successfully find their way in the Brazilian market. Okay, the first 3 steps are all about building a solid foundation. You've got to do your homework. You start with deep market research to find your specific niche. Then you adapt your product to make sure it actually fits what Brazilian buyers want. And critically, you get all your compliance and paperwork sorted out before you even think about shipping a single thing. So once that foundation is solid, it's time to make the right connections. This means identifying and this is super important, verifying potential buyers. Then you engage in structured professional matchmaking. At the same time, you need a detailed landed cost analysis. You have to calculate every single expense, from shipping to port fees to taxes, to make sure your final price is actually competitive and profitable. And the final steps are all about locking in that success for the long term. You need some kind of local representation to follow up and keep momentum going. You need rock-solid logistics to make sure delivery is reliable. You absolutely need legal support for clear contracts. And finally, you can't just stop. Ongoing promotion is key to building your brand and making sure you have a lasting presence in the market. So this brings us to our final section. This is all about what it takes to turn that initial spark of interest into real, tangible success. We're looking at what this methodical, step-by-step approach really means for the future of this amazing trade relationship. And here's the thing to remember. This is not a one-way street. This whole structured process is a win-win. It helps Bangladeshi exporters actually succeed, and it allows Brazilian importers to find serious, reliable, well-prepared partners. It just raises the quality of business for everybody involved. And that really brings us to our final thought for today. We've just walked through how a structured playbook can help bridge a $343 billion opportunity. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is this kind of focused, supported, intelligent market entry the real key to unlocking the next massive wave of global trade, not just between these two countries, but for emerging economies all across the world?